There comes a quiet moment that changes everything. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with fireworks or tears. It's not the moment they leave, or when you try to hold them close. It's the moment inside you when something finally lets go. You stop explaining. You stop waiting. You stop rehearsing all the things you wish they'd understand. And instead, you just stop caring. Not out of bitterness, not out of spite, but out of truth. Because the truth has become undeniable. Caring more than them was costing you yourself. This is the moment an avoidant feels the ground shift. They may not admit it, but they feel the difference immediately. The energy changes. The dynamic they once relied on dissolves like mist in sunlight. For the first time, the control they quietly held begins to slip through their fingers. Avoidants live by control. It's not about dominance. It's about safety. For them, love is dangerous territory, full of expectations, needs and emotions they were never taught to handle. Many of them grew up in homes where love was inconsistent, where affection was unpredictable, where closeness meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant pain. So they learned to survive by pulling away, by being strong, by being distant, by being self-contained. They built walls, not to hurt others, but to keep themselves safe. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's exactly what happens to avoidants. Their distance isn't fate. It's an unconscious defense. They don't push you away because they hate you. They push you away because love feels like a threat to their carefully constructed sense of safety. But here's the paradox. The more you chase them, the more they retreat. The more you explain, the more they shut down. Because your closeness to them feels like pressure. And your desire for connection reminds them of everything they've spent. Their life avoiding, their own fears, their own vulnerability, their own buried longing to be understood. So the dance begins. They pull away, you chase. They go silent, you overthink. They withdraw, you overcompensate. And though it feels like love, it's really a silent war between fear and desire. You're both trapped, them by their avoidance, you by your hope. But one day, something in you shifts. You wake up and realize the exhaustion of always being the emotional anchor for someone who refuses to hold the rope from their side. You see that love isn't supposed to feel like waiting at a locked door. And suddenly, instead of knocking, you turn around and walk away. Not because you've stopped loving, but because you've started remembering yourself. This moment terrifies the avoidant more than any argument ever could. Your silence is not just quiet, it's a statement. Your calmness is not indifference, it's power. They expected tears, confrontation, or desperate explanations. But what they meet instead is your peace. And that peace mirrors something they've spent years avoiding: themselves. For the first time, they're forced to face the emptiness that exists when the person who once poured all the love and reassurance into them is no longer there to fill the space. At first, it confuses them. Why aren't you reacting? Why aren't you trying? Why aren't you proving your worth anymore? They may even test the waters. A short text, a nostalgic memory, a small poke just to see if they still hold emotional power. But when your response is grounded, calm, and detached, they feel something they can't easily name: loss. And here's the truth. When an avoidant feels they're losing control, it's not just about losing you. It's about losing the emotional certainty that fed their sense of stability. Your love, even when unreciprocated, served a purpose. It confirmed that they were still desired, still safe, still in control. But when that validation disappears, it shakes their foundation. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." That's why avoidants often distract themselves after a breakup. They keep busy, start new projects, even jump into new relationships. Not because they've healed, but because silence feels unbearable. Stillness reveals too much. It exposes the truth they've buried for years, that they want love deeply, but fear it even more. And while they wrestle with that internal conflict, something new begins inside you, a transformation they can neither control nor comprehend. You begin to see that peace isn't found in chasing clarity from another person. It's found in giving yourself the closure they could never provide. You begin to reclaim your energy, your time, your emotional space. You start laughing again, not because everything is perfect, but because you've stopped needing it to be. That shift, your shift, is the moment the entire dynamic collapses. Because power in relationships doesn't come from who cares less. It comes from who is most at peace with themselves. And when you reach that peace, the avoidant feels it like a vibration they can't ignore. Your detachment is the mirror of their avoidance. Your silence reflects their fear. Your calmness exposes their chaos. They start to question, did you ever really care? Were they wrong about your loyalty? Have they pushed too far this time? And beneath those questions lies something deeper, regret. Avoidants rarely say it out loud, but they feel it deeply. They replay old moments, scroll through your pictures, recall small things you once did. They remember your softness, your warmth, your patience, and realize too late that those were rare. In losing your care, they lose the emotional compass they never admitted they needed. But here's the irony: on what breaks them is not your absence, it's your peace. Because your peace is proof that their biggest fear, being unnecessary, has come true. And that realization doesn't just hurt, it dismantles the illusion they built about themselves. They thought detachment made them safe, but now they see that it made them lonely. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that's exactly what this detachment gives you. It's not revenge. It's not punishment. It's becoming. It's the moment your story stops revolving around their fear and starts centering around your freedom. And that is the moment the avoidant feels something they never expected, that your absence speaks louder than your love ever did. The dynamic has shifted forever, not through anger, not through games, but through stillness, the kind that comes from finally understanding that peace is not found in their return, but in your release. At first, they pretend not to notice. They'll tell themselves you're just busy, distracted, going through a phase. They'll scroll past your updates pretending not to care, but their mind lingers longer than it used to. They'll rationalize your silence as temporary, but deep down something feels off. The rhythm they once dictated has changed, and this time, they're not the ones controlling it. Avoidants live in patterns. It's how they survive. When they sense closeness, they pull away. When they sense distance, they reappear just enough to keep you tethered. It's a subtle game of emotional regulation, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. They don't want to lose you, but they also don't know how to keep you. So they manage the connection carefully, like someone handling fire, close enough to feel its warmth, never close enough to get burned. But when you stop responding with the same energy, when your texts no longer carry the undertone of longing, when your presence feels detached but peaceful, it unsettles them. It feels unfamiliar. You've stepped outside the emotional script they've always relied on. They don't know their lines anymore. At first, they test. A casual, "Hey, how have you been?" message after weeks of silence. A story reaction. A question they already know the answer to. It's not an invitation. It's an investigation. They're not reaching out to reconnect. They're checking if they still matter. If you respond warmly, they retreat again, reassured that the control remains. But if you respond with calm, distant kindness, or worse, not at all, they feel a wave of panic that they can't name. Control is oxygen for the avoidant. Without it, their inner world becomes chaotic. They start feeling emotions they've spent years suppressing. Doubt, regret, loneliness, fear. And the irony is cruel. The very distance they created to protect themselves now becomes the reason they feel unsafe. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. For the avoidant, your silence becomes that pain. It forces awareness, the awareness of what they lost, and of the emotional walls they built to keep love at bay. They start realizing that the walls that protected them are now their prison. You might notice it in their sudden nostalgia. They bring up old memories out of nowhere. The time you laughed uncontrollably, the trip you took together, the small joke that only the two of you understood. It's not coincidence. It's longing disguised as casual conversation. They want to revisit the moments that remind them they once had your warmth, even if they didn't know how to receive it. But what truly breaks them is not that you're gone. It's that you've changed. You don't argue anymore. You don't justify. You don't chase. You don't try to decode their moods. You've detached, and your peace has become something they can't touch. And suddenly, their sense of superiority starts to fade. They used to believe they had emotional control, that they could come and go as they pleased, and you would always be there. But now they see that your world didn't collapse without them. You're not waiting by the door. You're walking through new ones. It's here that the avoidance fear of intimacy turns into fear of irrelevance. They start to wonder, was I the one who mattered less? Did they ever truly love me? Have they found someone else? And beneath all those questions lies a deeper truth. They never really wanted to lose you. They just didn't know how to keep you without feeling trapped. For you, this is where the healing deepens. Because detachment doesn't mean you stopped loving. It means you stopped bleeding for love that refused to meet you halfway. It means you learned the sacred art of letting go, not as a performance, but as a peace treaty with yourself. You stopped trying to prove your worth because you finally saw it. And that realization doesn't just free you. It exposes the cracks in their carefully constructed armor. Avoidants thrive when they know they're desired. It feeds their illusion of control. But when your energy shifts from desire to self-respect, that illusion collapses. They can no longer draw power from your attention. They can no longer rely on your reassurance to soothe their fears. They are left alone with their own reflection. And that reflection is hard to face. Because for the first time, they see that their independence was never freedom. It was loneliness dressed in pride. Others take a quieter route. They begin to reflect. Not instantly, not dramatically, but slowly in fragments. They start connecting dots they never could before. Why they pulled away when things got close. Why they sabotaged moments of intimacy. Why they pushed away the person who made them feel seen. For the first time, they start to feel remorse, even if they can't name it yet. And you, the one who once waited, no longer wait. You've stepped out of the cycle. You've stopped measuring your value by their response. You've learned that silence can be louder than words, that peace can be more powerful than love given to the wrong person. You've learned that emotional detachment is not the absence of feeling. It's the mastery of it. As your energy shifts, so does the dynamic. You're no longer orbiting around their distance. They're now orbiting around your calm. Because in the end, the avoidant's greatest fear was never losing you. It was seeing you thrive without them. Your freedom exposes the illusion they lived by. That love could be controlled. But love was never me could before. Why they pulled away when things got close. Why they sabotaged moments of intimacy. Why they pushed away the person who made them feel seen. For the first time, they start to feel remorse, even if they can't name it yet. And you, the one who once waited, no longer wait. You've stepped out of the cycle. You've stopped measuring your value by their response. You've learned that silence can be louder than words, that peace can be more powerful than love given to the wrong person. You've learned that emotional detachment is not the absence of feeling. It's the mastery of it. As your energy shifts, so does the dynamic. You're no longer orbiting around their distance. They're now orbiting around your calm. Because in the end, the avoidant's greatest fear was never losing you. It was seeing you thrive without them. Your freedom exposes the illusion they lived by. That love could be controlled. But love was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be shared, nurtured, received. And when they finally realize that, when they see that your heart no longer beats to the rhythm of their uncertainty, it awakens something deep, something they've avoided all along, the longing to be safe in love without losing themselves. That realization will come slowly, quietly, and sometimes too late. But for you, that's no longer the point, because the moment you stopped chasing what was never stable, you found something that finally was yourself. There comes a point when the silence becomes louder than any argument ever could. For the avoidant, that silence begins to echo, a haunting reminder that the connection they once kept on a leash has slipped away. At first, they try to outweigh it. They convince themselves that you'll eventually reach out, that your calm is temporary, that your peace is just another emotional tactic. But days turn into weeks, and the quiet remains. It's no longer a pause in the story. It's the ending of a chapter they didn't know how to write differently. Avoidants are not heartless. They are simply terrified of being seen. Their fear of vulnerability runs so deep that even love feels like exposure. They crave it, but the moment it draws near, they retreat into the familiar shadows of control. Yet when your light disappears, when your warmth no longer radiates toward them, they begin to feel the coldness of the space they've created, and that coldness is unbearable. They might not show it outwardly. On the surface, they'll continue their routines, work, friends, distractions, maybe even a new relationship. But beneath the calm exterior, their thoughts spiral. They start replaying the moments when you reached for them, and they turned away. They remember the softness in your tone when you said, "It's okay," even when it wasn't. They recall the small gestures, your patience, your laughter, the way you made love feel safe. These memories creep into their quiet hours, often when they least expect it. It's not nostalgia, it's realization. Carl Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And that's what your connection did. It changed both of you. For you, it revealed how deeply you could love. For them, it revealed how deeply they could fear. And now, in your absence, they face the cost of that fear. When an avoidant realizes they can no longer sense your emotional tether, it dismantles the illusion of safety they've built. They used to believe that love was dangerous, that it would take away their freedom. But now they see that their version of freedom has come with its own prison bars. Loneliness, regret, unspoken longing. They begin to see that in pushing you away, they were never protecting themselves. They were only ensuring that the very intimacy they craved would always stay out of reach. And yet, here's the irony. The more they feel this, the less capable they are of expressing it. Avoidants often have no language for loss. They don't know how to say, "I miss you." They don't know how to confess, "I was afraid." So instead they act. They hover near your digital presence, a like on an old post, a story view, a small attempt to feel close without being vulnerable. They might reach out with something trivial. "I saw this and thought of you." Or, "Remember when we went there?" But the tone will be restrained, cautious, testing. Because for them, every word is a risk. They want to connect, but not expose. They want to feel you near, but not lose face. When you respond with calm, grounded energy, no resentment, no pleading, no chase, it triggers something unfamiliar inside them. You've become what Jung called the integrated shadow, the part of the psyche that has faced pain and turned it into wisdom. Your energy no longer reacts. It reflects, and that reflection forces them to see their own wounds more clearly than ever before. They start to ask questions they once buried. Why did closeness feel so suffocating? Why did they mistake care for control? Why did they push away the one person who stayed when everyone else walked away? And underneath it all, they meet the emotion they've avoided their entire life. Grief. Avoidants grieve differently. It's not loud. It's quiet, delayed, almost invisible. They grieve in half-formed thoughts and restless nights. They grieve in the small spaces between their pride and their pain. But that grief is a teacher. It begins to show them what they truly lost. Not just a partner, but a safe space they didn't know how to keep. As this realization unfolds, your own transformation deepens. You no longer look back with longing or bitterness. Instead, you see the truth with clarity. You understand that their distance was never about your worth. It was about their fear, and your detachment was never about punishment. It was about healing. You've reclaimed your energy, the part of you that once lived in waiting. You've learned that peace isn't found in someone returning. It's found in no longer needing them to. You've learned that real love cannot coexist with emotional imbalance. That connection must flow both ways, or it drowns one of you in silence. You've learned that your love was never too much. It was just misplaced. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that's what detachment truly is. Bringing light to your own darkness, to your wounds, to the places in you that once begged to be chosen. It's not about hardening your heart. It's about softening it in the right direction, toward yourself. Meanwhile, the avoidant stands at the edge of a mirror they can't escape. For the first time, they see the reflection clearly. The emotional walls they built are cracked, and through those cracks, they see not strength but fear. They see how many times love knocked, and how many times they turned it away. And this realization doesn't destroy them, it awakens them. But awakening is not easy. It demands humility, it demands accountability, and it demands courage to admit that control was never power. It was protection from pain that no longer exists. Some will try to fix it, some will reach out again, this time with genuine openness. Others will retreat further, hiding from the reflection because it hurts too much. But whatever path they take, the dynamic between you has changed forever. Because the power no longer belongs to control, it belongs to awareness. And that's where liberation begins. Not in who wins, not in who leaves, but in who awakens. For you, awakening means freedom. For them, it means reckoning. Both are painful, both are necessary, but only one leads to peace. As the silence stretches, both souls begin to see the truth. Love was never the enemy, fear was. And when fear finally breaks, what remains is something more honest, more human, more whole. Not the illusion of connection, but the understanding of it. Not the craving for control, but the courage to let go. Time passes differently once you stop waiting. The days that once felt heavy with uncertainty begin to feel lighter. You start waking up with peace instead of anxiety, with presence instead of longing. The silence that used to hurt now feels sacred. It's no longer a punishment, it's your protection. You start realizing that your healing was never meant to change them. It was meant to free you. Because when you stop needing someone to validate your worth, the world around you changes shape. You begin to see that your value was never lost. It was only buried beneath your effort to be understood. And this is what truly shakes the avoidant. They see a version of you they never met. Calm, grounded, radiant. You're no longer trying to fix the bond. No longer trying to pull them closer. You've become whole again. And that wholeness is magnetic in a way that your pain never was. They feel it in your silence, in your lightness, in your ability to move forward. At first it makes them uneasy. They used to believe that love meant control, that as long as they could keep you reaching, they were safe. But now your detachment forces them to confront a new truth. Real safety was always found in emotional honesty, not in distance. They begin to feel something rare, admiration. They respect your calm, even if they can't mirror it yet. They start seeing you not as someone who needed them, but as someone who chose peace when love turned into pain. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make peace with your unconscious, it will dictate your life, and you will call it destiny." For the avoidant, this is the moment destiny reveals itself. They begin to see how their patterns, the push, the retreat, the silence, were not choices made in strength, but reactions made in fear. And for the first time, they start wanting something different. Not control, but connection. Not safety in distance, but safety in presence. They may reach out, this time with softness. Their words may tremble. They might admit what they never could before. "I didn't know how to love you back then. I was scared." And while those words might come late, they carry weight not as a promise, but as proof that even the most guarded heart can awaken. But here's the truth. By the time that awakening comes, you've already crossed the bridge they were too afraid to walk. You've stepped into a new emotional landscape, one where love no longer feels like anxiety, where peace is not something you earn but something you embody. You no longer crave closure because you've become it. You no longer chase understanding because you understand yourself. You realize that loving someone who fears intimacy was never a mistake. It was a lesson in boundaries, in patience, in knowing when to stay soft and when to step back. It taught you that empathy without self-respect becomes self-abandonment, and that healing is not about becoming colder, but wiser in where you place your warmth. The avoidant will see this change and feel it deeply. They might not say it, but they recognize it. That your love was real, that your detachment was strength, that your silence was never punishment but peace reclaimed. Some will want to rebuild. Some will finally do the inner work. Others will watch quietly, haunted by what could have been. But for you, the chapter is no longer about them. It's about you stepping into your power, the power of someone who no longer needs to be chosen to feel worthy. Love, when it's healthy, is not a battlefield. It's a sanctuary, and you've learned that the person who can offer you that sanctuary must first have built peace within themselves. You've learned that your soul doesn't crave intensity. It craves safety, reciprocity, stillness, the kind of love that doesn't demand you shrink to fit inside someone else's fears. When the avoidant realizes you don't care anymore, what they're really realizing is that you no longer orbit their avoidance. You've broken the gravity of that emotional loop. You're not punishing them. You're freeing both of you. Because every time you refuse to chase, you give them a chance to face themselves. Every time you choose peace, you invite them to do the same. Carl Jung wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." That's what this journey has been about. Awakening. For them, it may begin with loss. For you, it begins with clarity. Clarity that real love doesn't hurt. Clarity that detachment is not a wall. It's a doorway. Clarity that peace is not the end of love. It's the beginning of the right kind of love. You start to see that maybe this experience was never about losing someone. Maybe it was about finding yourself in the process of letting go. Maybe it was about understanding that your power was never in being needed. It was in knowing when to walk away from what didn't nurture you. And so you forgive, not because they asked, but because you no longer need to hold the weight. You release the story. You bless the past. You carry the lessons forward. Because now you know, love given in fear will always drain you, but love given from peace will always free you. Your calm becomes your strength. Your detachment becomes your wisdom. You no longer chase closure from them because you've already found it within. You no longer wonder if they'll come back because you've already moved forward. You no longer wait for their recognition because you've already recognized yourself. And in that recognition, everything changes. The person who once feared losing you now realizes they already did. Not because you stopped caring, but because you grew beyond the version of yourself that needed to. Your peace becomes the final word, not revenge, not regret, but release. And that release is what sets both hearts free, one to face its shadows, the other to walk fully into the light. Because in the end, when an avoidant realizes you don't care anymore, it's not really about indifference. It's about awakening, theirs to their fear and yours to your freedom. And that is the real closure. The kind that doesn't need words, just silence, peace, and the quiet knowing that you finally chose yourself.